Hi there, and welcome to Sleepless Shadows, the place where spooky stories, eerie encounters, and calming sounds come together to help you drift off. Here, you can unwind, relax, and let your mind wander into worlds of mystery, suspense, and horror. Close your eyes, get comfy, and get lost in the story. I hope you enjoy. The Drowning Song. Chapter 1. Saltwater Mornings. Elias Gray trusted the kinds of that can't pretend, a knot you can set your life on, an engine that either answers or doesn't, a compass card that spins when it's been lied to and steadies when you stop. At 34, he had rope burns where other men had wristwatches, and he counted the years by which scars had turned pale. He was not a storyteller by temperament. Stories always sounded to him like sales pitches. The ocean never once tried to sell him anything. The blue comet eased out of Port Cedar like something recalling an old habit. Twin diesels purred below deck, a sound that lived behind Elias's ribs as if it had always been meant to. But was 65 feet of polish and purpose. Marcus Vale's pride, teak that gleamed even when salt tried to chalk it. Interiors better than most apartments Elias had rented, hardware that kept its word. Not his, not even close. And that had to be fine. He had the helm, which was the part of ownership that mattered. Captain. Naomi's voice came up the companionway ahead of her, smiling before her face did. If your coffee gets any blacker, it'll insult the weather. Elias took the mug she handed him. Weather has thick skin. Your stomach doesn't. She squinted at the horizon as if someone had put it on a shelf crooked. Pretty morning. Pretty's not a forecast, he said. It's optimism. She brushed a wind-stray curl behind her ear with the back of her wrist. Barefoot already. Naomi believed shoes should be earned. We're stocked. If anyone has an allergy I don't know about, I'll turn the boat around and sell them on shore. Marcus would buy the shore to keep us out here, Elias said. You say that like it's a joke, Naomi said. Good thing he hires decent captains. Cal sprang up the last 3 steps like the deck might get away without him. Forecast says blue on blue for a week, he announced. Got up early to ask the ocean personally. Stop talking to the ocean, Naomi said. She's a bad listener. Cal glanced at Elias. She listens to you. She tolerates me, Elias said. It's different. The guests arrived in a hum of expensive zippers and the smell of sunscreen, too early in the day to be completely sincere. Marcus Vale appeared first, sunglasses confident about the sun despite its reluctance. He had the posture of a man who once rode crew and never forgave his body for discovering chairs. Elias, he said, spreading his arms to take in water, sky, boat, narrative. Tell me this is not the best day of your season. It's a day, Elias said. We'll see where it wants to go. Rory came up with a laugh already running. He was broad through the chest and careful with nothing except people's feelings. Those he kept soft for. Vince followed, easy grin, phone in hand, a man who could turn a stubbed toe into a good anecdote by lunch. Cap, Vince said, offering a handshake that tried to be a hug. Monsters, point us. Monsters are mostly paperwork, Elias said. We'll aim for fish. Heather hovered at the edge of the group, a neat blouse adjusting itself to sea air 1 fibre at a time, hair pinned with an efficiency that predicted good decisions. She took in the deck in a single long glance, not like a tourist but like an appraiser. Rails, lines, angles, exits. She nodded once, as if the boat had made its case and she had accepted it. The newlyweds, Kyle and Jen, came last, hand in hand, looking like the word "our" had recently become heavy enough to carry between them. Kyle grinned at everything. Jen grinned at Kyle. Her sweater sleeves swallowed her wrists despite the heat, and she pushed them back as if they were being sweetly unreasonable. Everyone good? Elias asked. We'll get a tide for free if we don't dawdle. Did you hear that? Marcus said, as if he'd just invented the tide and would be invoicing nature. Naomi rolled her eyes and passed around a plate of something that smelled like butter, being honest. Eat, she said. If you all get sick, I'll hold your hair and then tell stories about it later. Food and blackmail, Rory said. Best charter yet. Elias took the blue comet through the last of the harbour's combers and the day opened. The town folded itself down into a smudge. Gulls let the boat go. The horizon unrolled like a measuring tape with no numbers. He felt the small relief he always felt when land stopped tugging at his peripheral vision. He never trusted a place that asked him to look back. Something lifted out ahead of the bow, a clean, pale curve like a hand's flick, then wrote itself back beneath the surface without a splash. Not a dorsal, not a ray, a tail his brain offered, and his mouth decided no. The ocean made shapes, it was good at that. Cal shaded his eyes. Tell me you saw that. Water shows off, Elias said. Cal said, satisfied. Good. Because I saw it too. Dolphin, Kyle said, already halfway to the rail, camera out, hopeful. Dolphins show off, Naomi said. That was polite. Polite? Jen asked. Like when someone strong moves around you and doesn't bump you, Naomi said. It felt like that. They set their run. Marcus wandered the deck like a mayor flipping ribbons. Heather disappeared and reappeared with a notebook. Rory and Vince took the stern and turned catching nothing into a competition with rules they invented by the minute. Kyle found angles of the boat no one would ever notice again. Jen found the one patch of shade that let her see both water and sky at once and leaned her hip there, as if she'd grown up on decks with hips and shade made exactly like this one. By nightfall, the ocean had settled into the kind of smoothness that makes people who love land suspicious. Elias took a coffee Naomi swore was a mistake and stood at the bow to watch the water pretend to be metal. Far out, a pale shape rose and sank with the modest efficiency of something that had found the exact amount of movement needed to be true. He made no note in the log except weather and position. He slept like a person who had left land behind on purpose. Chapter 2, Into Open Water. By the third day, the screens on everyone's devices had given up pretending. Heather closed her tablet like the end of an era and set it in a drawer with a neatness that made Naomi tease her about funeral rites. Do you bury it at sea? Naomi asked. Or just say a few words and move on? A few words always cost more than you think, Heather said dryly, but she smiled. The boat settled into its rhythms. Morning coffee on the aft deck in a semicircle that changed only by who arrived late. The sound of knives in Naomi's galley, steady as a heartbeat. Onion cleared by the pound, because onions forgive many sins. Cal's first sweep of deck checks done with a commentary that made even Elias grin. A slap and hiss of water on the hull became punctuation. The boat talked in sentence fragments, and everyone learned how to read. Teach me a knot, Jen said to Cal on day 2, while Marcus and Rory were busy conducting a highly scientific experiment about which can made the best koozie. Which one? Cal said. There's 100 that'll make you look clever, and 5 that'll save your life. Start with saving my life, Jen said. He showed her a bowline, while Elias pretended not to watch. Cal's hands moved like this was medicine, not performance. Jen's hands learned like they had always wanted to. Rabbit goes up the hole around the tree. Why is there a rabbit? Jen asked. Every story has an animal, Cal said. Don't pull too hard. Let the rope do the remembering. That's the most beautiful thing you have ever said, Naomi told him, walking by with a tray. Don't ruin it with the next sentence. Marcus came by with a glass. We're going to a place that doesn't have a name, he announced. I showed Rory the chart. Even the chart shrugged. That's how you know it's good. Charts shrug when you spill coffee on them, Elias said. And when you found an untouched gem, Marcus said, happily impervious. Gems are hard, Heather said. Rocks can be any shape. In the afternoon, the sea shifted in a way that felt like weight entering a room. The wind didn't die, it simply stopped, bringing news. Elias felt the boat's response through the wheel, a subtle settling, as if they'd come above something that wanted them quiet. Feel that? Cal murmured. I do, Elias said. What is it? Jen asked quietly. She had a frown she used only when she thought no one was looking. Depth, Elias said. We're tracking a trench line. Water behaves different over water that has no bottom, you can say out loud. Love this conversation, Rory said, loudly. So relaxing. At dusk, the sky turned the colour of a bruise forgiving itself. Naomi stood at the rail, eyes narrowed, then sniffed. Do you smell that? Dieseled. I always smell diesel, not diesel, Naomi said. Something sweet, like flowers, not new ones. The memory of them. Perfume, Vince said. Are we being seduced by the sea? Because same. Grow up, Heather said, but there was no meanness in it. Maybe it's bait fish, Kyle said hopefully, because hope was his hobby. Like I don't know. Some oil? Elias inhaled. The ocean had its dozen standard notes. Salt and iron and metal and sun on rope. Beneath them, clear as if he'd pulled it up on a line, something like the softened warm room scent of flowers that had forgotten their own names. He opened his mouth to say so and shut it again. And people believe captains passed where they should. He knew better than to give them a word they would carry into the dark. Later, when the moon laid a slash of light across the water, something pale lifted off the starboard quarter and curled, neat as script. If it had splashed, he could have filed it among dolphins, rays, anybody he knew. It did not splash. It folded itself away as if the sea had chosen to be modest. "Okay," Cal said softly. "Rude to keep showing off without introducing yourself." "Maybe it's shy," Jen said. "Maybe we're lucky," Naomi said, though her voice did not sound convinced. Chapter 3: The First Notes. The first time the sound came, Elias looked up, because the part of him that lives in instruments heard it before the part with ears did. A high note, held too steady to be a machine and too clean to be wind, leaned into the air and then curved. It was the contour of a voice without the drag of words, the idea of a melody remembering itself. "Do you hear that?" Naomi asked, ladle held above a pot like she had forgotten what soup was for. Cal blinked and rubbed the back of his neck as if he'd felt a hand there. "If I say no, I'm lying." "Rigging," Elias said, immediately irritated with himself for the way the lie tried too hard. "Rigging can complain, hum, shiver. It does not make your tongue sweet." They stepped out onto the night deck as one, like a family by an old habit. The sea lay glassed and patient. The note was higher now, a second voice following the first by a sliver, then both fading until you had to admit you were remembering them and not hearing them. "Radio from far off," Vince suggested hopefully. "Who would be broadcasting an area?" Heather asked. "Pirates," Rory said. "Classy ones." "Classy pirates are why we can't have nice things," Naomi said. Elias walked the rail with his flashlight down at his hip. He didn't shine it into the dark. He let the dark decide what to hand him. The beam traced deck lines and bolted hardware and the tired gleam of salt stubbornness. When it wandered, accidentally over the water, the surface opened and a pale tail rose with courtly restraint, turned once like an eye glancing back at the boat, and slid into black without a ripple. "Did you—" Kyle started. "Probably tuna," Elias said, "because you can buy time for a crew with a lie if you don't spend it too long." Kyle laughed nervously. "Yeah, a huge, pale, elegant tuna that takes ballot on weekends." Jen held herself like a person listening to a remembered lullaby. "It's pretty," she said. "That's the strange part. It feels pretty." "What does pretty feel like?" Rory asked, genuinely curious. "Like someone seeing you for a long time," Jen said. "Like they have time to keep seeing you." No one wanted to admit that the music had made them tilt their heads in the same direction at the same time. They went to bed early and didn't sleep. Chapter 4: Missing. Vince slept late. It was a joke until it wasn't. Naomi banged a pan and he did not appear. She sent Cal to poke fun at him and Cal came back with a different face. "Not there," Cal said. Shoes under the bed, wallet in the drawer. Clothes looking very Vince about their choices. But not Vince. "Check the head," Elias said, "and check the parts of the boat people forget exist. Lazarette, chain locker, aft lockers, under benches, behind coils. There are not many places to hide a body on a boat that is still a person." Marcus took the news like a hit he'd told the world he was too tough for and then had to live with. "We've got a man overboard protocol for this, right?" he asked Elias, eyes on his mouth as if the right answer would make the reality different. "We have a search," Elias said, "and we're starting it." They printed patience on the water in careful circles. Sun climbed and stacked heat like plates left to dry. Rory remained at the rail, scanning with a devotion that had anger in it. Kyle pointed his camera and did not press record. Heather took statements with a pencil, tone gentle, questions not. "Time did you last see him? Who was awake then? He had been drinking. How much? Did he say anything that sounded like plans?" Cal answered as if the truth were a door he could hold open. "I walked him to his bunk. He called me his favourite deckhand, which is a lie because I am his only deckhand, and told me to stop tucking him in. He wasn't mean, he was tired." "Did you lock his door?" Heather asked. "You don't lock doors on boats," Cal said. "Not the way you mean." By noon the tone of the air had changed colour. Naomi called everyone to the galley and put plates in front of them and did not let them leave until food had been at least insulted by forks. "Fuel goes in," she said. "It will help you think, and if you can't think it will help you not die while you try." "Could he have jumped?" Marcus asked later, to Elias at the wheel. as if he were trying out each possible verb to see which one fit least badly. Fallen? People fall when they want to, Elias said too quickly, then softened it. There are ways a body leaves a boat that leave a sign. I didn't see one. Doesn't mean it's not there. Marcus turned his hands over as if looking for proof. He stopped. Is there a chance someone... No one on my crew pushed your friend, Elias said, and I did not push your friend. That wasn't... Marcus started, then stopped again, ashamed and not enough. We'll keep looking. They kept looking through the long blue glare and into the silver grey of evening. When the black settled, they looked with lights. Elias traced beams over nothing, and nothing refused to become something. In the midnight quiet, the melody came back, soft, sweet, patient. The boat felt small as if the water pressed in, curious, listening. He went to the stern because the stern is where endings gather. The water there was dark velvet, stretched tight. A pale tail rose at the edge of the deck light's circle. Not a fish's flick, an arc with intention in it, continuing a pattern he could not see, then subsiding as if the ocean had decided they were not ready to be friends. Elias did not wait Cal to tell him. He wrote "continued search" in the log and then drew the kind of straight line a hand makes when it doesn't want to tell you it's shaking. Chapter 5. Fractures. Fear has a housekeeping impulse. It rearranges chairs. It makes tables smaller. It finds the one pot that clicks when it cools and makes it click more. The blue comet shrank by degrees hard to measure. Naomi cooked too much and pretended it wasn't too much until the leftovers began telling on her. Cal scrubbed the rail with a rag that used to be a shirt and watched the horizon with the attention of a dog. Rory avoided mirrors. Heather's pencil found a rhythm that made lines more dangerous than you'd think lines could be. Kyle filmed clouds because clouds did not look back at him and ask for anything. Jen sat at the bow as if the boat would give her the right sentence if she waited politely. Marcus developed a habit of narrating. Cal was on deck at 23:10, he'd say to himself, as if he were the sort of person who wore a watch he checked on purpose. Vince left the galley at 22:40. Elias was in the wheelhouse from 23:30 to 0:15. Naomi did a head count at midnight. Stop, Naomi said gently, sliding a bowl in front of him. Eat this. It will give you something else to do with your mouth. Do you think I'm wrong? He asked her. As if permission to be wrong would feel like sleep. I think you're scared, Naomi said. I think the difference is not helping you right now. That night, after plates had been collected and Cal had committed small violence to a deck stain that did not feel it, Naomi washed pans already clean. My grandfather said sometimes on the flat nights the sea sings. He said men follow it because they think it's their own childhood calling from a window. Your grandfather also said mayonnaise was witchcraft, Cal said. He was right about both, Naomi said. Elias stood behind them at the open hatch and listened to their familiar shapes trying to hold. Outside the deck lights turned the sea to a thing you could bite. Far out from the bow, a pale tail lifted. It did not thrash. It did not need to. Jen, who had drifted forward with the same care she used for everything, said, "She's lonely." "Who?" Kyle asked. "I don't know," Jen said, and kept looking. When Elias went below to finish the log, Naomi followed with a plate. "You're not a martyr," she said, setting it down. "You're a man with blood sugar that will make me hate you if you don't fix it." He ate 2 bites and the food sent its small grace outward like warmth. "Thank you." "You're welcome," she said, and did not add the rest of the sentence, which was, "I'm not going to bury another person who thinks the sea is a mirror for him." Chapter 6. Overboard. It came apart in the galley at the seam that had been waiting all day. Marcus asked Cal again how much Vince had drunk. Cal said enough, and then, "I don't know," and then disastrously laughed when neither answer pleased. It was not a laugh anyone meant. Marcus took a step. "You think this is funny?" "I think you want me to have a different answer," Cal said, jaw tight. Naomi put her hand between 2 chests like she was keeping a door from slamming. "Sit down, both of you." Jen pushed her chair back like a person careful with china. She smoothed her hair, although it didn't need it. Kyle's hand came up because hands come up in stories like this, and because he believed touching a shoulder could stitch anything. She smiled at him. The smile had love in it, and a history, and a separate decision. "I'll be right back," she said, and walked out. Elias got to the hatch in time to see her pause at the threshold. The sweet smell was there again. Not flowers now, but the room that remembered them. The first note rose gently, as if in apology for arriving. It felt like being recognized by someone you had only ever wanted to be recognized by. "Jen," Elias said. She stepped onto the deck as if she were stepping into a familiar bath. Her hands went to the rail. She swung one leg in a motion that would have been called graceful if anyone had had room for adjectives, and she slipped over into black water as if darkness had been designed to accept her. The splash was small, the sort that turns in on itself. Kyle's sound had no words in it. Cal hit the door jamb with a shoulder and ricocheted forward. Naomi grabbed his belt and held him, because she had long practice, and because he weighed what a life's worth of good choices weighs. Elias's beam found the place where the sea forgot what shape it had been. The cone of white landed on nothing and then on something, a pale arc turning once with a tension in it, a tail, strong as a promise made softly. Water closed and smoothed like a hand over a blanket. They threw lines at absence. Marcus swore like prayer. Heather shouted times and directions because that was the weapon she had. Naomi said, to no one and to everyone, "She is not a fool." Something spoke to her. "What?" Marcus demanded, raw. "What spoke?" "The same thing that's been speaking to all of us," Naomi said. The difference is she had the manners to answer. "I'll go," Cal said. "You'll stay," Elias said, voice low, not a request. "You'll, 'cause you're mine to keep, and I am keeping you." Cal's face cracked like ice too thin for a boot. "We're just gonna, what? Pretend this is weather?" "No," Elias said. "We're gonna build rules. And we're gonna survive long enough to carry them ashore." Marcus locked the liquor cabinet with hands that didn't want keys. 10 minutes later he found the spare bottle he kept for celebrating, and didn't celebrate with it. "No one on deck alone," he said, to the stove, to the sink, to the floor. No one. Chapter 7. Lockdown and lies. They became a small town with curfews and a rumor buddy system, check-ins every 20 minutes. The head counted like the rosary. Naomi put sandwiches into hands that didn't want the energy but needed a job. Heather drew the shape of the boat on yellow paper and began to map movement. "This is not an accusation," she said, pencil steady, voice as kind as she could make it. "This is a timeline. Timelines are harder to argue with." "Everything is an accusation when someone you love is missing," Rory said. "Write that down." "I will," she said, and did. Marcus tested each rule like a fence plank. He kept Cal in his peripheral vision, then his direct vision, then within arm's reach. Because if he could keep one variable known, the equation might not come apart. Cal smoked on the aft step and stubbed each cigarette like he had offended him personally. He made a joke that was actually funny and no one laughed because the laughter was gone for the day. In the night, the song moved through the hull like sound taking a tour. It found corners and pressed against them. Elias walked with a flashlight he hid from himself. Pale bodies paced the boat just beyond the light. He saw hair drift around faces. He saw eyes catch light like stone, not like eyes. He saw tails lift at the edge of the visible, punctuation written by a patient writer. Kyle sat on the deck with his back to a bulkhead and his hands fisted on his knees. "She told me once," he said to Elias, "that a song can make a room feel like your childhood kitchen." I said that was sentimental. She said I had no idea how to be sentimental, and that was my problem. "People who know how to be sentimental wear their lives warmer," Elias said. "Do you think she—" Kyle started. "No. That's a stupid— There are no smart questions right now," Elias said. "Just the ones that hurt less." Morning provided work. It is the only thing it can do. Elias put them on a heading he could defend with math, toward lanes where voices travel in a civilized way. The boat obeyed, because boats prefer being given verbs. "Do you think—" Marcus began to Elias, then stopped. "I keep wanting it to be someone's fault." "It will be," Elias said. "It will be mine, it will be yours, it will be the oceans, it will be the days, but none of those will be true enough to help." Heather had fallen asleep at the table with her face on her arm and a pencil still in her hand. Naomi set a blanket over her like dignity. Cal stood watch on the bow and never once looked behind him because he had promised not to be alone, and stayed where people could find him with a single step. They made it through without anyone else going over by using up all the luck that had offered itself. Chapter 8. The Song and the Storm. Storms announce themselves with courtesy and then arrive rudely. Wind came with that flat tone that tells you it has run out of small talk. The water stood up to meet the boat. Rigging said new words that were not complaints anymore. Rain slapped and then smashed. The blue comet rode down into a valley that felt carved, then up the other side into teeth that broke and regrew without permission. The music did not get lost. It thickened and threaded through the noise, sweet and wordless and delighted, as if the storm were a doorway it had been waiting to walk through. It did not shout. It simply refused to be drowned. Thecla clipped a safety line to her belt, and then unclipped it, without meaning to, and looked down at her empty fingers like she'd learned something about herself she would have liked to forget. She clipped back in and said, "No," to the air. The air did not answer. Rory tried to hold the door, and the door tried to leave his hand. Naomi grabbed his jacket and shoved him inside and shouted at him until the fear went out of his face in a different direction. "You don't get to make me cook for ghosts," she said. He laughed, a short animal sound, and stayed. Cal went for the rail like a person who had forgotten which way was home. Marcus tackled him like a man who'd been waiting to do one useful thing. "You're not dying noble," Marcus said into Cal's shirt. "We're fresh out." Lightning took a photograph of the world and left it behind Elias's eyes. In the fraction of a second the light stayed white. He saw faces in the water, smooth as masks, eyes like stone, mouths soft and wrong. They looked up at him with an attention that felt like a weighing and like a choosing and like a blessing if blessing had teeth. Tailsen fell with the calm of creatures sure of their element. The song rose to meet the thunder and passed through it without changing shape. Kyle climbed the rail with a serenity that made Elias want to break something gentle. "Kyle," Elias said. "It's all right," Kyle said, and looked surprised that anyone could disagree. Naomi reached for him, and her hand lowered itself as if the sea had taken custody of it. "It's beautiful," she said. He tipped forward and became part of the rain. Heather vanished in a way that left no sentence to wrap her in. One moment she was a person attached to a thing, the next the thing had no person, and the sea had not a ripple to show for it. The wheels spoke in Elias's palms like a friend, and he listened not because he trusted steel more than water, but because he needed one voice to require action. He set his jaw around orders that had to be spoken, and brought the boat around through a punch of water that could have turned them and did not. When the storm closed itself, it did it decisively, like a window pulled down. The melody gentled with it, tidy and proprietary, as if it had taken inventory and signed off. Elias stood with his hands on metal he could name, and felt everything he didn't know like a tide in his bones. He made the count without paper. He put names in his mouth and let them dissolve. He did not get to keep anyone. He had known this the first time he let sea air in. Chapter 9. Drifting. There are silences big enough to live in. The one that followed had rooms. Elias moved between them, touching door frames as if the house might be offended if he didn't. He checked cabins. Objects obeyed the orders their owners had given them. Book face down mid-page, watch left unwound, a t-shirt folded with a care the day hadn't deserved. Jen's sweater lay on a hook, sleeves hanging like arms that wanted to be held. He tried the radio. Distance answered him with indifference that would have been comforting if it had been cruelty. He set a heading anyway, because hands grieve better when they work. The sea smoothed down to a hush. During the day, a pale tail stitched the water far off and the seam vanished behind it neatly. At night, pale bodies kept pace with the blue comet just beyond the light. Companions, not hunters, not yet friends. He could see the way water loved them, the way it slid across their bodies without complaint. Hair moved around faces like weeds in a gentle tide. Now and then an eye picked up the deck glow and gave it back unblinking. The song visited some nights like a lullaby sung from another room, and some nights like a memory humming to itself in his ribs. He left the radio off when he could afford to. He let the boat become a shell that the water spoke into. He slept in thin slices and woke with the taste of salt and sweetness as if he had bitten a fruit he couldn't name. Naomi's presence stayed in the kitchen like weather. Cal's laugh, when it arrived in memory, found the exact pressure in his chest that needed to be pushed. Heather's pencil ticked from some other life on some other desk in a place where paper could be kept safe. Marcus's grin started correctly and then stopped in the middle like a song cut short. Rory's prayer had the right volume in the wrong room. Near the end of the third night, when even the sky seemed undecided about whether it wanted to try light again, Elias knew the quiet in the air meant something like a held breath, but not his. He went to the rail because some instructions are not spoken but still arrive. Chapter 10. The Last Note. The hour was before dawn and before birds, and before the habit of being awake had caught up to anyone who wasn't already. The sea lay like the skin over a sleeping person's chest, rising and falling so lightly you could convince yourself you imagined the movement. The air had the faint sweetness of a room that once, long ago, had flowers in it, and had not entirely forgotten. Elias set his bare feet on the rail, not to climb yet, just to know the metal with his skin. He put his hands around it and did not squeeze. He thought, briefly, of every time he had stood like this in other years, in other weathers, with other names in his head. He did not pray, he breathed. The note came the way laughter comes, the way weeping does, the way a child's weight comes to your arms when they fall asleep and you decide to stand there longer than you have to. It rose within him as much as around him. It was a woman's voice, if you needed a word for it, and sweet in a way that was not sugar but recognition. It did not ask, it welcomed. He stepped up and did not look behind him for permission. The boat murmured to itself sedately, a house dreaming. He thought of Naomi's onion rhythm, Cal's awkward joke that had saved 3 minutes on a bad day, Heather's pencil finding room between lines, Marcus's showmanship melting where it should have, Rory's loud heart wearing thin. He thought of Kyle's soft, "It's all right," and Jen's, "I'll be right back," and how both sentences had been true the way we understand truth later than it matters. He dove. The water received him with the practiced grace of a bed that has learned a body. Cold took him and then forgave itself and became merely temperature. Darkness untied into layers, ink, smoke, velvet. Between them, green waited, dim as a remembered hallway, then brighter as if it had been called by name. Tiny lights lit and unlit with his movement, like a word being spelled and unspelled. They approached without haste and without doubt, which is a kind of love. Silhouettes arranged themselves into a ring, with a courtesy that told him they had rules, and he was presently inside them. Tails moved with a power that impressed itself on the water without needing to prove anything to it. Hair drifted with the water's logic. Hands hovered near him, not touching. Etiquette matters even where language does not. The song arose not from a mouth but from the space their bodies made together, from water being pressed into a shape that could carry joy. It was sweet, it was careful, it was glad. He smiled because it would have been dishonest not to. They lifted him until he lay under the skin of the sea, face up to the underside of whatever Sky had in mind. Light began to lance through in slender blades that wrote pale scripture down into the green. Faces arrived, and his mind tried to put them into boxes that did not fit. They were beautiful with the exactness of masks, beautiful the way an instrument is when it has been tuned so fine it almost refuses to be played by human hands. Skin without pause or argument. Eyes like stone polished smooth by centuries, drinking light rather than reflecting it. Mouths soft and shaped for something the surface does not and cannot say. Those mouths curved, the curve was a smile, the smile was hunger. Hunger put on a coat that looked like kindness and wore it convincingly. None of it looked like danger. A hand touched the back of his neck, warm the way a bath is when someone who loves you runs it. Another spread over his sternum, thumb finding the notch as if he had been measured long ago and the tool kept close. A third slid below his ribs, not in invasion, but in proposal. He let breath go, and bubbles wandered up like scenes from an older life and did not ask to come back. The song changed key, a quiet flourish of approval. Fear came to stand beside relief like two animals who had discovered, to their surprise, that they could share a bowl. The unsettling part, that it felt good, presented itself and then, impolitely, stayed. Light grew. For a few heartbeats the faces arranged themselves into something almost human, or his mind did it for them out of thrift. Cheeks that could have remembered laughter if laughter existed here, eyes softening to the suggestion of iris. The impression only, of eyelids that might someday close. He allowed the kindness and did not try to keep it. Honesty seemed an important currency at this depth. They drew him closer until chest recognized chest, or what chests are, and the rhythm inside him adjusted as if to admit a guest. Hands firmed with the ease of ownership that has never needed to insist on itself. Affection tipped into claim with a quiet that would have sounded like manners if manners had been the point. They pulled downward, at first like guiding someone through a crowd, then like taking them home. The surface above trembled itself smaller, green concentrated until it was the only part speech could not touch. The pressure settled on his joints, an unknotted something he had packed there when he was 10. He felt the ache lift off him like an ill-fitting coat. He did not miss it. The melody moved inside him and sat down where the breath used to have jurisdiction. Oh, he thought, without words this was always for me. He tried to picture the blue comet and found only the feeling of wood polished by hands. He tried to list names and found the warmth of them without letters. Mercy, he thought, and didn't know from whom. One face came nearer than vision, more an idea he could touch than a thing. The mouth opened with ceremony, and a line of warm bubbles kissed his lips with the confidence of a beloved ritual. Salt, copper, something like fruit left in a window. He did not need air. He wanted this instead. Wanting is a religion if you keep it sincerely. Above, the first edge of sun cut cleanly into the world. A blade of gold fell through the water and struck his eyes. In that instant, the faces around him arranged themselves into human long enough for him to recognize the outline of it. The smile widened. Teeth showed. They were for a diet not invented above the surface, and the fact did not resent him. Arms, there were arms. He would not lie about that. Wrapped him in a precision that had nothing of hesitation and everything of calculation. The embrace deepened. Pressure became comfort, became law. He went down gladly. Around him the circle tightened in fine companionship, tails sweeping in a rhythm so exact a metronome might blush. The song hummed approval and something else, delight at a task completed. The water thickened into a bed that had had his name in its sheets for longer than names have been a human trick. He closed his eyes because light up there had become an imposition, and because closing your eyes is how you admit you have arrived. The last thing he let himself see was the surface knitting back into a hole. Far off, a pale tail rose and flicked once, precise as a stitch, and dawn sealed itself. The world above smoothed like skin. The world below held him the way a promise does when it realizes it has kept you faithfully all along. He was kept. He kept nothing. The difference at that depth no longer mattered. The song continued where breaths end, and it was sweet, and it was kind, and it was his.